morning, everyone. Welcome back to Too Cool for Middle School. Today we're going to be talking about teaching the characteristics of civilization. If you teach ancient history, this is something that you do every year, kind of at the beginning of the year as you're getting into ancient Mesopotamia and those first civilizations. And I was like, looking around for different ways to do this, and there's usually like 6 characteristics. They're essentially the same. Like, some people use slightly different terminology to explain them, but like kids write them down on like a little wheel or on a flip book or in some other little format, but it's all essentially the same thing. And I was teaching this during, like virtual teaching a couple of years ago. And I was like, I cannot have my kids just like type this into a doc. Like, this is going to be way too boring. So I created something a little bit different so that we could see how civilization has either like stayed the same for thousands of years or, like how it's changed in this context. And because I was teaching it during a pandemic, during quarantine, the definitions of like what a civilization is took on a new meaning. So we're going to be talking about that amongst ourselves today. Right now it's 2022, and I'm teaching 6th grade, and they were 3rd graders like when we all went on lockdown in 2020. So already they're kind of like they were sort of too young to like process things in the same way that I did, and it's just gonna get worse and worse as the years go on. They're gonna be like babies when the pandemic first hit. So I don't know how useful this will be like for our actual students, but we need to talk about this. We need to talk about why, even right now in 2022, we still have so much stress from this damn panic, this panini. Remember on Instagram, like anytime you use that word in your captions, like it would give you that little link to like COVID resources. So people came up with all these different words. So anyway, I just created like a slideshow, Google Slides. So we're just gonna go through this. I will link it down below. I have this in my Teachers Pay Teachers store, and this was useful for teaching when we were virtual. And then even now that we're back in person, it's nice that kids don't have to keep track of another piece of paper, and it like has to be digital because they need to find images online. So it's just worked well in this format. And then I'm sure at least one of the days that I was teaching this, like we did spread it out over about 2 days, I think. I was probably out with a sick baby at one point. So that's kind of like always what I'm thinking about now too. Whenever I plan lessons, like, is this a lesson where like I am essential? Like, is this something where it's going to require so much explanation that they cannot do it if I'm not there? Like, a sub will not be able to facilitate this. And if the answer is yes, I'm just like, we can't do things like that anymore. My life is too unpredictable. I might not be there. So I think this was one of those things where we started it off together, and then they did the last couple of slides on their own, or at least like the video slide. Okay, so anyway, let's get into it. So it just starts off, characteristics of a civilization, and the first thing that you need is a stable food supply. So I wrote a little definition there so they read about what a stable food supply is, and then they have to find a picture of where they get their food. Now, you might have some students that really do like grow their own food, and then they jar it, can it, pickle it, whatever, and they have some kind of storage and they store most of their food. I wish that's what I did. I wish I had that kind of a setup. But for most of us, we really don't have like a year's supply of food at our house. We have to go to the grocery store once a week, maybe more often than that. So we talk about that, how like in our civilization, we actually store our food at the grocery store. That's where most of it is. And we go there and we buy it and then we bring it back to our house. But like the storage facility kind of is the store. And then like in ancient Mesopotamia, they did have like storage silos of grains and stuff like that. And then you'd kind of dole it out to people for the work that they did building ziggurats or whatever. We get into that in other lessons, but like we kind of store our food at the store. So they find a picture of wherever they go grocery shopping and they put that up. This kind of like triggered me though, because as you will remember if you're an adult, those first couple of weeks, I guess, of lockdown, you would go to the store without your kids. You leave your kids at home. So that's probably why my students don't really remember this as much. Their parents probably were not taking them when they went to the store. But the shelves were bare. There was no toilet paper. There was no bread. There was no pasta. There were no canned goods, no cereal, no frozen pizzas, nothing. It was gone. Our supply chain was disrupted. People were freaking out, and the first people to get there bought all the water bottles and everything. So we could argue that we did not have a stable food supply. Even now, it's 2022, and we still have like supply chain disruptions. I feel like I can rarely find like the type of bread that Jensen wants. For some reason, I can never find the type of like Eggo waffles that he likes. For a long time, I could not find like apple juice boxes. I can't find baby formula. That's huge. It's so incredibly stressful trying to find baby formula. And like, this is all just like continued trauma for us because the pillar of our civilization was quite wobbly, if not, so that stable food supply is not so stable. And I wonder if a lot of people ended up like, planting their own little gardens and stuff. We should do that. I feel like it would cost so much to like get it started, and we're in a rented house. So like, it's kind of hard to like invest in that. But in case you can't get to the store, you gotta have something. We at least try to stock up on things more now than we did before. So we're gonna kind of have like these two simultaneous conversations going on here. So there's what you assign to your students and talk about with your students, and then just like we're processing like, oh my gosh, our civilization was at least like partially crumbled and kind of still is. Okay, so that's stable food supply. And then we go into social structure, and I think in different textbooks, we kind of define this differently or like use a different term. But another way to say this would just be like a division of labor, specialization of labor. Basically, we don't all farm all day anymore. We divide up different tasks because we got more efficient at farming and then storing that food and hopefully having a stable food supply. So then other people could maintain the irrigation systems or build the ziggurats or build houses. Or one thing that we did in class that was really fun is we got some wheat berries and like mortar and pestle, and kids ground up the wheat berries just to show them like, okay, that would also be really labor intensive to like make the flour. So if that's your specialized labor, like, okay, you've got to take the food that people have grown and then grind it down into flour and then turn that into a dough and then make the bread and then feed it to people and they eat it in 5 minutes and all your work is gone. But this division of labor, this specialization of labor is important to create a civilization so that people are freed up from farming to do all of these different things. Again, during this lockdown time, and still a little bit now, people couldn't go to their jobs necessarily. They're trying to work from home, but their kids aren't in school, so they're kind of, like being a teacher at the same time, kind of like trying to help their kids log on. Teachers are trying to do what they do from home through a screen. They might even have their own kids, so you're in charge of like childcare, hunting and gathering essentially to like get food for your family, plus whatever other job you have. And that was incredibly stressful for all of us because we weren't able to divide up that labor. We didn't really have that specialization of labor anymore. And then it was so interesting that the term like essential workers was sort of coined, which people used to call like unskilled labor, low skilled labor. And now, because we recognize that like, oh, if someone is not at least trying to get those grocery store shelves stocked or making some kind of food at like a fast food place, or because a lot of restaurants had to close down because they couldn't figure out the regulations and everything. Like we need somebody still like picking up our trash, maintaining the electric grid, I don't know, Wi-Fi, all that stuff. So, we truck drivers, we still relied upon this division of labor. And while many people worked from home, there were still a lot of people who we expected to still go to work in that Amazon fulfillment center or in their Amazon truck and bring us all the things that we were ordering online. So we had a real weird social structure and division of labor at that time. So we still do. We have not really figured this out yet. So I have my students find a picture of a job that they would like to do one day, like an example of somebody doing that job, and they put that in there. And then kind of on the side, we have a conversation about like, okay, so if you are busy all day doing that job, what is something that you're not going to have time to do that you're going to have to pay somebody else to do? And maybe it's as simple as grow your own food. You're not going to have time to grow your own food, so you pay for food that people have planted and grown and harvested and packaged and shipped to a store. Maybe you're not going to be able to be home with your kids, so you're going to need to pay for that. All my students said they're not going to have kids. They're like, it's fine, I'm not going to have kids. I'm like, all right. They said they don't want to cook, they don't want to clean. You have to outsource those things. So whatever you decide to do is only possible because somebody else is doing all those other tasks for you that you don't want to do. So we had a pretty interesting conversation on this slide. So this is why it takes a while to get through these, because we do have some kind of fun conversations going on as we're talking about these things. The next one is government. So we talk about just the need for creating like policies and services and stuff as people came into cities. Like how are we going to organize all these people? So we talk about things that people get for free, or it doesn't even necessarily have to be free, because like your water, like you pay for your water, but there's like government, like city entities that make sure that like the water is there. And in some places the water runs brown still in 2022 and has for like 10 years, like Flint, Michigan, Jackson, Mississippi. The government is not doing their job to maintain clean water. So can we really say that those places are civilized? Are we really a civilized society? I don't know. But anyway, they put a picture in there of something that is free, and like school is the most obvious answer, right? We're in a public school. They don't give me $10 when they walk into my classroom, unfortunately. So, also on these little slides, as they put the picture there, they're also adding a caption underneath the picture and like explaining why they chose that picture, you know, answering this little question. So like, why would the government find it necessary to provide this for people for free? Because we have to maintain certain things, and that's what a government does in order to maintain our civilization. And again, with the pandemic, with lockdown, it was really hard to maintain a lot of those things. It was very difficult to maintain school in any sense. We had government entities trying to create a vaccine and then like distribute that vaccine and get the information out there to people about how to try to not spread this virus way faster than it needed to be spread. So there's a lot that goes into a government. And so they find pictures of those things and write a little bit about it. And again, this could take on a whole life of its own. So the number 4 is religious systems. And so here they add a picture, just something like a symbol or whatever that shows a religion that either they practice or just one that they know about. Because I find that a lot of my students don't practice a religion officially, which is fine. But, you know, we didn't really get into this too much, but religious beliefs, religious entities do control a lot of what happens in our society. This is true for the United States. We have a lot of government officials who say that they are creating certain policies or voting certain ways because their religion tells them that they have to do that. There are a lot of countries where there are like stark divisions between people of different religions, like in India with Hindus and Muslims. And so even if like, I feel like this one, among the students in my class, they were kind of like, like religion's not that important in a civilization. Like they don't really see it, but on a larger scale, it really is, because it informs our belief about like who's good and who's bad, like where the forces of good and evil come from, like who should be punished and how we should punish people for things. And like if you have a sense of religious zeal, it can make you do some wild things sometimes. So we didn't get too much into that one. I was like, just like find an example of a religion. But, again, we're having our other like adult conversation over here. Religion prevented a lot of people from getting the vaccine. I just remember like seeing people on Facebook posting how like the vaccine was the mark of the beast. And so if you got it, you were like denying God. And I was just like, this is insanity. So, and a lot of religious leaders, like pastors, and who, you know, were communicating via social media, like YouTube videos or streaming or whatever, were able to reach a lot of people with a lot of weird ideas. And then on the other hand, there were a lot of religious groups like doing really great work and serving people throughout this time. But it is incredibly impactful, even though it kind of doesn't seem like it on like a day-to-day basis. Okay, so then we talked about how people develop culture within a civilization and develop art and architecture and music and instruments, and they started to like decorate their pottery and decorate their cups and create images of their gods and their leaders, you know, etch those into stone. So like that's one of the next thing that comes up when we have a stable food supply and we've got people who are freed up to be artists, and you have this religious aspect to life, and you have a government that you're serving also, like that actually facilitates a lot of art. So I had them put in like a picture of a musician or artist or actor, somebody like that who is, you know, creating art and kind of shaping culture, and then also talk about like what does that say about our culture that this person is famous. We have a lot of people who are famous for being YouTubers, like gaming YouTubers. We have a lot of people that are famous for being like reality TV show stars. Like what does that say about our culture? Who's setting trends? Who's selling us things, you know, stuff like that. So we think about that just a little bit. And this is very tied into like art as well, you know? So then again, in relation to lockdown and the pandemic, once we were inside, the only thing we could do was binge Netflix, watch Hulu, watch YouTube videos. People started watching TikTok all the time and making TikTok dances and challenges. I was reading a lot. Like we relied on art. We listened to music. Maybe we watched Hamilton on Disney Plus. We watched a play, right? So once so much else was stripped from us, we were relying a lot on art. So artists are important, and people that shape culture are important, and that is a big part of our civilization. And so I did have them like think back to like, okay, what were you doing then once you were done with online school for the day and did whatever else you had to do for your parents? You still probably had a lot of free time. What did you spend it doing? What type of like art and culture were you consuming? A lot of us were watching like Tiger King and Love is Blind season 1. Ooh, I think season 3, like the update, this is, oh yes, October 26th. More episodes are out. I got more addicted to TV shows than ever because I had all this time. I got used to like just watching something episode after episode. So again, another interesting slide to fill out and talk about. Okay, then we talk about technology. And of course, at that time, the wheel was just like an absolute technological wonder, to not have to drag or carry or haul all the things that you had to trade and to sell. And you could take this wheel that they had used for pottery, prop it up, start to roll it, put a piece of wood on top of 4 of them, maybe now attach it to a donkey or an ox or something, and drag all of the things that you had to sell, all of those wheat berries that you have or whatever. This is huge. A wheel is a really world-changing piece of technology. So then I had them add a picture of some piece of technology that was invented during their lifetime, just so that they would have a sense of like how it was useful. So it could be an app, it could be an actual item, and then they had to write about how, you know, people use that in their daily lives. Could be a game, whatever. So there's lots to choose from there. Okay, we have 7, I guess. For some reason I was thinking there were 6 or 8. I don't know. And in different textbooks, sometimes I think there are 6. I think a textbook that I've taught before had 6 categories. I think a different textbook had 8. I think I got these from another textbook, but it's okay. Like we can, you know, we can be fluid in this and still have these good conversations. So written language is the last one, starting to talk about cuneiform, and it's mostly invented just for like receipts, just for record keeping. Like, okay, you gave me this much, now I owe you this much money, or you owe me this much money. Like that's how all of our writing systems begin. It's mostly just receipts. And so then I just have them add a picture of something that they read every day and what kind of information are they getting from that. And I remember a couple years ago, a kid said like, it kind of feels like we're like reverting back to like cuneiform because we use emojis so often. So now we're using like pictographs again, and it's kind of true. I don't know, maybe, you know, maybe that's just a really effective way to communicate. And then lastly, I've just linked a video. It's kind of like in the Minecraft style, like it uses a lot of Minecraft imagery because that's kind of what they're doing in Minecraft as well. So it would be cool to like, if I knew Minecraft better, if I knew how to use it better, like utilize it for this, you could have them like create a civilization within Minecraft. That's kind of what the game is if you're in creative mode and not, what is it, survival mode? I don't know. I only know these things from Jensen. But anyway, they watch a video that kind of goes through these things. They might use slightly different terminology, but again, like it's a good thing if students are kind of hearing slightly different terms for things and recognizing like, okay, that means the same thing. It's good for them to do. And then they just take a few notes on that video that's very kid friendly, and that's the end of the activity. So I find this to just be really engaging for one thing, much more engaging than just like writing these things down in a flip book or whatever, and connecting it to their own lives and finding examples of how we see this today, and then recognizing how things have changed and how things have stayed constant within this like concept of civilization. So it's a cool lesson, and then it kind of like sends me into like this existential crisis. Like, do we live in a civilization? Do we have stability within this civilization? It feels like we didn't, and I'm sure this is gonna affect me for the rest of my life. Having lived through what we lived through, hopefully it doesn't get worse or happen again. Like climate disasters. I was watching on, I think it's on Apple TV, it might be HBO, I forget, but it's like 5 Days at Memorial. And it's like the true story of what happened in this hospital in New Orleans after Hurricane Katrina hit. And in those 5 days, civilization collapsed. There was no stable food supply. There was no government helping anyone with anything. People could not do their jobs, and they, you know, people who were supposed to be helping other people couldn't do that or didn't do that. And so yeah, like just like recognizing that this concept of civilization is not a given, and it's not something that's like once it was set up in Mesopotamia thousands of years ago, like it's going to exist everywhere forever. Like we have to actively maintain our civilizations. So there's that. So I will link this resource down below. If you have thoughts, leave them in the comments. Let's talk about this over a cup of coffee that has now gone cold. I need to go heat this back up. All right, I'm gonna go read something. I'm gonna go eat something just to prove to myself that I live in a stable civilization. History teachers are great. I love you guys. Thank you for being here. I will see you next time. Bye.